4 hours on the air on Saturday. You missed me. Don't you watch CFL preview? Then pregame show of 5 hours. Can you imagine talking 9 hours about anything? It was unbelievable.
I only watched the pregame. The moment you were off the screen, I turned off the game and I put something else on. So I figured I'd find out how it went from you and from my social media feed.
Age? It's just part of the story. Whether you're getting a head start or reaching new heights later on, it's all about what you do with your time. These are the stories of people proving that it's never too early or too late. This is Just a Number.
Hello, everybody. It's Daniel. It's Just a Number. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. We have a treat for me today. Okay, it's the one and only. It is James Timothy Barker here, affectionately known as Jim Barker, the, if I'm not mistaken, 5-time Grey Cup champion, GM, head coach, and a whole bevy of other things, including, most recently, a TV personality, a superstar of the television networks, and a very good friend of mine. And this could be episode 1 of 15 between the two of us. Maybe we'll turn this into our own podcast going forward. Good to see you.
Hey, it's great to be on, Daniel. I feel honored to be one of your early guests in this new adventure of a podcast you're on. It's you're going to dive into such interesting things. I'm going to probably have to end up watching. I don't watch any podcasts, but I'm going to have to watch yours because you could be talking about real estate. You could be talking about anything.
Who can also throw a football?
Selling tickets to CFL games.
You got it.
You could talk about running organization. You can talk about everything. I'm so impressed with you that's to be able to be on your podcast this early in the process. Like I'm honored.
You're a pioneer. Now the guests are going to be lining up for this thing when they catch word. Wait a second, Jim was on that thing? Oh, so it is legit. It is legit.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Maybe we'll just do an hour of pumping each other's tires and then
there you go. There you go.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. And honestly, this is an opportunity. I mean, we've known each other now since I guess it was 2010. So yeah, almost 15 years. And this is, I mean, there's no interview talk I wanted to do any more than this, given the timing that we are now like not even 48 hours removed from our sort of first meeting place, coming full circle in the Toronto Argonauts winning yet another Grey Cup this past Sunday. So that must have been exciting. You were there, right?
Yeah, I was working. 4 hours on the air on Saturday. You missed me. Don't you watch CFL preview? Then pregame show of 5 hours. Can you imagine talking 9 hours about anything? It was unbelievable.
I only watched the pregame. The moment you were off the screen, I turned off the game and I put something else on. So I figured I'd find out how it went from you and from my social media feed.
Well, I was the only one. Enoch Mwamba and I both picked the Argos. The only one. Everybody else picked Winnipeg. And so you missed that. You missed that choice. You missed Prince Harry came in and took my seat at one point.
I did miss that. Seriously.
Yeah. When Prince Harry came in, I said, you know what? You can take my seat anytime you want it. And he kind of smirked. That was all I could get out of him.
Hey.
And they wouldn't let me take my picture with him.
Well, you got a royal smirk, though. That's more than most people can say.
Don't they realize he might have wanted to have his picture taken with Jim Barker?
There's a strong possibility there that's the reason he chose the chair he chose.
Well, then I asked, where's Megan? Because I was going to take care of Megan and occupy her while Harry was doing his thing with James Duthie. And it was a perfect plan. It just, none of it came to fruition.
I mean, she's the Canadian, right? So I think it only makes sense that she would have been.
I think they're living in Victoria. I think they're living in Victoria now.
Well, I didn't know that, but now I know. Well, hey.
I don't know. I don't know that. That's not a fact. Somebody had mentioned that he's now living in Victoria.
Well, we're going to become one of those rags of a podcast now, where we're
spreading rumors.
The paparazzi are going to be following you around now to find out what you know about Harry and his entourage.
Really?
So I have a feeling that most of this recording might take a similar tone to what it's been so far. But I do want to. So you're coming at us now from San Francisco. Is that right? That's what you said?
Yes, I'm down here. I'm doing some business things and that kind of thing. So I'm down here about 3 days, and then I'll head back to Toronto.
Nice. No rest for the wicked at all. You
No,
leave Vancouver and straight to San Fran. But it's a good segue because if you can believe it, I did the smallest bit of research. And if I'm not mistaken, your coaching career began in San Francisco, didn't it?
pretty much. I was at Occidental College 1 year, and
Okay.
then
Okay.
right out of college, I went in and volunteered to be a coach at Occidental College. And then the coach left after the first year. He went to another university, and I was like, what was I? I was just out of college, so 21, and I was like the interim head coach because I could recruit and stuff, but I was 20, 20, 21, 20. I was as old as the kids that there were.
Yeah.
So I couldn't be the head coach. So we interviewed head coaches, and they brought a guy in that basically he lied to me. He said, "Oh yeah, I want you to be my full-time coach and everything." So I said, "Yeah, we should hire this guy." And then he says, "Well, I really have another guy I need to bring in." So I said, "Bye-bye." And I came up to San Francisco State and got my master's degree, and it was a great move. I was worked for a guy named Vic Rowan here, who's a legend in coaching, and he was like 90 when he was working with me. And so he had been through it before. And Mike Holmgren was on our staff. Actually, Mike, we hired him. I was already on the staff. We hired him as our quarterback coach back in 1980. No, yeah, 1980, 81. And then, 80. And then Mike and I both, 81. And then Mike and I both left, and Andy Reid and Dirk Cutter came in to replace us. Two guys that became NFL head coaches. Obviously, everybody knows Andy Reid
and Mike Holmgren, yeah,
and Mike Holmgren and Dirk Cutter, and so there's been a lot of coaches go through there. And
now, were you rocking the same mustache back then too? Was that a prerequisite of being on that coaching staff?
You know what? I don't think I did. I don't think I had it then. I really don't think I had the mustache going back, but I did at one point. I wanted that Marlboro Man look.
Oh,
you remember the Marlboro Man?
Okay, yeah.
I was looking for that because I kind of like to wear those plaid shirts back in those days. And
I got you.
And
that's why you ended up in Calgary for a bit, probably.
Probably. And I had the mustache going, but then the mustache became a sign for porn stars, and I felt like it was time to eliminate the mustache. So
well, hey,
I haven't had it in a long time.
There's always time if that's in your future plans. There's always time.
Because it'd be white. I'd look like Santa Claus. I can't do that. When I'm at the bit, and now I'm in television, I've got to try to keep up with. They keep bringing these young bucks in, and here I am. I'm 68 years old, and I'm trying to hang on to this, with all these young guys coming in, and they're all beautiful looking and that kind of thing. And then there's me, and I'm the guy who brings common sense.
You put them all to shame. What do you mean? They're just aspiring. But I mean, ultimate segue there. I mean, this podcast is all about, people who achieve and go through things at maybe ages that aren't considered, the norm. But you've already touched on the fact that you entered coaching when you were the same age as the people you were coaching, and you probably started learning some of the hard knocks right out of the gate, with what happened at Occidental. And then
it's one of those things that, when you go to a place, if you do a good job. So I was at Occidental, and then I left, went to San Francisco State, got my master's, and then a new coach came in, because the guy that didn't keep me, he obviously got fired after 2 years. He was gone, and so the new coach after him bring me back full time. That was my first full time job, $12,000 a year. I was the offensive coordinator at Occidental College, and there was actually a player in the game, a Grey Cup game yesterday, from Occidental College, Brian Scott, and they don't even play football anymore. And he was on I think the last or second to last team they ever had at Occidental College.
Oh man, there's some full circle right there.
So I went there for 3 years, won championships every year, and they had never won there. And we got lucky and had a really great young class, and it ended up we played on national television. So Occidental College, Hank Stram and Dick Stockton. did the game, and this is a great story. So they went down to University of San Diego. Now, University of San Diego we were Division 3, and they had about 115 players in all. I mean, just massive program. And I at Occidental, we had 46 players and guys living under the stadium, and it was just a different world than USD. So Hank Stram goes and visits USD, and then he comes and watches us practice the 2 days before the game. And he said, all the coaches are in there. He goes, boys, I've been down there and I've been here, and you have zero chance to win this game. How do you prepare your guys? And I was just an assistant, but I piped up because you know me, Daniel. And I said, Mr. Stram, with all due respect, we're going to kick their ass.
And you can print that.
Yeah. And I said, and you're going to be shocked. And after the game, you're going to come over and say, wow. And sure enough, we won 35-20. And it was like just a class. And sure enough, he came down and he said, youngster, you just keep going and doing what you're doing, because that was a beautiful thing to watch, this Raggedy Ann team playing against so that was kind of a start for me. And then I started to develop a little bit of a reputation, got a chance to go to New Mexico State, which was Division 1. So now I got into that 22,000. I was making over 20,000 a year, which I had never done. And that was in 1985. Yeah, I was at New Mexico State. And another great story for your people who like these stories about. So we go through the year and we end up 1-10, okay, which isn't very good. But again, it was one of those things that it was their third year. They had just moved into the PCAA with Fresno State and Long Beach State. And, for New Mexico State, it was just that was a big move. And knew we weren't going to be great, but 1-10 was maybe worse. But we finished. I was the passing game coordinator, and we finished 25th in the nation in passing. And so at the end of the season, the coach gets fired, and we have a veteran coach who's like been there for a while, and he's an older guy and he tells us, whatever you do, I've been through this before, whatever you do, don't tell them anything. Don't tell them anything about recruiting. Don't tell them anything about anything you do. Make them hire you to tell them. So, I had I didn't tell them a word. And we go through this, and who they kept? One person. Guess who they kept?
Oh, hey, I bet I'm talking to him.
No. They kept the guy who told me, don't say anything.
Oh, he was staying. I thought he was the guy who was leaving. Oh,
no. This was a guy who was on the staff.
Oh, so he screwed you.
He was the veteran. He brought us all together and told us how to handle a new coach coming in.
So he screwed you.
So be very careful, because it gets very cutthroat when it comes to jobs. And he basically, I'm not going to say he lied to me, but it was one of those things that only one guy gets rehired, and it's him. So
right. Yeah,
it was a good lesson in my quest. So what happens? I go back to San Francisco State, because the people that Mike Kelly, who ended up coaching in the CFL, he left, and there was 2 jobs. So I ended up going back to San Francisco State full time now, though. So I got my master's degree there. So now I was teaching classes, and I was a full-time coach, and I was like made over $30,000 finally.
So what were you teaching? I was curious.
I had
Mr. Barker.
I had racquetball. I had advanced volleyball. I had advanced. Listen to this. I had advanced tennis. The biggest thing was I could not let them see me play. So I would use all the techniques but the key was never let them see you hit the ball.
I love it. I love it.
So I taught advanced tennis, and I had all the buzzwords and things like that. But they never ever saw me hit a ball.
Well, hey, you understood the technique. You just didn't want to put it into practice. That's okay.
That's right. And I had racquetball, and I had weight training, and it was great. I really, really enjoyed it, because San Francisco was big cultural change for me to be in San Francisco, which at that time it was it was the time of homosexuality going rampant in San Francisco, and bathhouses and things like that were, again, it was part of life, so you don't really notice it. And then in 1992, I had left, and I was now at another place. But a friend of mine who was on the staff, that I was a roommate of mine, turned out that he was gay, and I had no idea. He was my roommate, and he died from AIDS from the bathhouses. He said, "Yeah, Jimmy, I could not tell anybody my real life. I couldn't be honest with you. I couldn't be honest with anybody." Well, I always thought he was dating the dance teacher.
Guess
but
you were wrong.
Didn't turn out that way. So it was a great lesson in life for me, that
just the assumptions we make about people. And
yeah. So I was there for 2 years, and then went to Reno, and was at Reno for a year. And my kids, my older two stepdaughters, got into some problems, and I just felt like it was a tough place. Reno was different than Vegas, in that in Reno, everything was centered at that point around casinos and casino life. And
right.
So anyway, they got into problems. So I left there. I loved it there. It was a winning program, and it was a good Division I program. And the head coach, Chris Alt, is a legend, and they call him the little general. He just, like, after the second game, we were at UC Davis, and the headsets didn't work real well, and the crowd's going wild. He couldn't hear me. I was upstairs talking to him, and because everything muffled, and he thought I was getting too excited and couldn't. And after the game, he said, "If you ever don't communicate with me again, or you communicate in the manner you did this game, you will be back at San Francisco State faster than your head can spin." Wow. He goes, "I will send you back so quick." And, I was kind of taken back by it, because, when your boss says that to you, and it never happened to me, and I got a family at this point, and I look back at him and I says, "You know what, coach, if you want to fire me, you need to fire me, but don't hold my job over my head." I think that's a bad motivational. That's what I said to him. And he said, "Well," he goes, "I need you to be better." And I said, "If I'm not, fire me." And I walked out, and he never, ever, ever did that to me again, where he did it to some guys like on a weekly basis. But it was just, I loved working for him. I knew what he demanded. I just didn't like having my job challenged. But a lot of people get into that kind of business, or you're a boss. And how do you get your people better? I mean, I think the one thing that I did once I became a general manager and kind of the boss of a football team was empowering people. And a lot of it goes back to that Chris Alt at Reno thing, where I was anything but empowered when my job was threatened, when I got a family, and, I'm trying to figure out how to put food on the table, and he's threatening my job over how I'm communicating.
Right.
It didn't really empower me, to become better. Well, and so I learned a lot about that.
And it became a mantra I heard from you since, when, you wouldn't tell everybody just fire me or things like that. But I remember it was kind of like, listen, I'm going to do the job I was hired to do. And rather than, threaten, or like, this is the nature of the beast. Like, you're a part of an industry that flips people like more than any industry, like any industry I've seen. And it's heartless, and it's thankless, and all that. And on a dime, your team loses a game that maybe you didn't have a direct impact on, you could be on the chopping block. But I think maybe it's just a function of you sort of developing that super confidence over knowing what your own value is.
Yeah, right? Well, it's interesting. I think the developing, like when I graduated from high school, I was very shy. I picked to go to USC because I wouldn't have to take speech. I wouldn't have to get up and talk in front of people. And then as time evolves, there's a confidence level. I just had my 50th reunion, and I saw people that, like, 4th, 5th, 6th grade Stacey Boynton. She was it for me.
Stacey.
But I would have never
Stacey. Come on, Stacey.
I would have never talked to her because I was scared to death. But here I am at a 50th reunion. I was able to go up and say hello, and it's
never too late.
How we change through life and through our experiences. And I think the experiences I had helped me with becoming a better leader once I became a general manager. And to me, that was my favorite. I mean, I liked coordinating offense and being in charge of that. And I didn't really like being a head coach, but I really liked being a general manager. And probably the thing I'm most proud of is I've had 4 young Canadian guys who had 0 experience in personnel, 0 experience in being in a front office. They had right out of school, and 4 of them are now in front offices in the NFL.
Yep.
And I'm proud of that. That to me is as exciting as all 4 head coaches in that game have worked with me. All 4 quarterbacks that were in the final, in the Eastern and Western finals, all 4 quarterbacks I brought in the league. That kind of thing is great. But watching these guys go and move, people who I kind of trained and empowered to become great. And I think that you have to be beaten down to kind of understand why that doesn't work.
Right.
And so, yeah, going back to my experience at Reno, that one experience, I mean, it was not fun at the time, but if a young coach now or a young person, or one of my daughters, if they have a problem at work and they get yelled at, I relay that to them, exactly what happened, and that they will come back, and that will become a great motivator for them.
For sure. So
yeah.
Was it part of your life's plan when you were a kid that being a coach was what you wanted to be, or was this sort of something that just grew as an extracurricular that got more serious for you?
Well, what happened was I wasn't a very good athlete. I mean, I could shoot the basketball, and I was okay, but I was not great. And when I started coaching, I hurt my knee as a sophomore, so I couldn't play basketball that year. So I coached a kids basketball team, and I mean, I had the expansion team, so it was 11 and 12-year-olds. And I drafted all 11-year-olds and worked with them that whole year. We ended up about 500. And the next year we went undefeated and kicked everybody's ass.
Sure.
And I said, I kind of like doing this. I like the building a team and then work with them and then watch them develop. And that was kind of the start of coaching for me, was in basketball.
Yeah. Do you hold a different place in your heart for the people you developed? Like, I know you've got to be impartial.
Oh, yeah.
But you see them in a different light, right?
Like Zach Caleros, Trevor Harris, those guys have Cody Fajardo, all of them. They're all guys that came in the league, and I honestly believe that we had a lot to do with getting them going in the right direction, and then they've all gone on and had success. That's exciting.
Yeah. You were talking about, I mean, the 11 and 12-year-olds and sort of the idea of, we'll call it developing talent early, because that's really what it was. In college, when you're a coach, you recruit and you're a little bit more hands-on on that side of stuff than, I guess, the divide between a GM and a coach when you get to, the majors, whether it's CFL or NFL. So was that sort of a missing piece when you got to the CFL, that you're like, you know what, the end game for me makes more sense to be a GM one day? Or was that not really something in your sights? It sort of grew.
No, that was never a factor. I did notice in pro football, what I missed in college football was, taking that 17-year-old kid in high school and recruiting him. And, he's got a girlfriend, and telling him, a year from now, I don't care where you go, that's not going to be your girlfriend. And if it is, then great. But life is going to move forward, and you're probably going to have 5 or 6 more girlfriends before you decide which one is the right one. That's just the odds, the way they, but
unless it's me and I met my girlfriend in Frosh Week and she's still, My
first week of
wife.
college, right?
Oh yeah, it wasn't high school. It wasn't high
So
school.
if I was recruiting you in high school, you could have had a girlfriend then and be not wanting to leave her. Then you get to college, and within a week,
and
within a week, there's Katie, and it's
right.
like it's over. It's all over.
It was over. It was over.
I know. And
here we are.
But that's my point. Watching a youngster come from high school and giving him advice like that, that's a kind of, and why going, I was at mostly academic schools, academic small colleges. I was at Occidental was that way. And a place called Pomona College, which basically more students turned down Harvard and went to Pomona than any other school Harvard went against. So Pomona was just one of those very academic. We didn't talk to anybody under a 1500 SAT. I mean, it was just, it was ridiculous how bright these guys were. But so when you're dealing with kids like that and talking to them about why they need to come to your place, you create a bond with them that's different than it is in pro football. And in pro football, I kind of got you can't really get close to people because players are chattel. And I hate to say that, but they're paid for it. Yep. I mean, it's in college. In college, in the old days, they weren't. Now they are. Now they're chattel too. But and that was a difficult thing. I can remember my first training camp with the Alouettes, and my wife, who's passed now, but at the time she had befriended a player's wife. They were watching practice all the time, and they became friends. And then that player ends up getting cut. And it was kind of an eye opener, but again, good thing it happened early, because the relationship with players, you want to be involved in their life. You want them to know that they're people first. And I always have believed that they're people first, but it's still a brutal business. Right. And when we go to training camp, I mean, I tell every person the very first day, we're not here to find reasons for you to make the team. We're here to find reasons for you not to make the team, because it's hard to say these are the people that are going to make the best football team. So we're looking for reasons to cut you, and that's difficult. That's tough. And definitely. In college, you never had to cut people. They were there. They were going to school and that kind of thing. So the relationship was just much different. Right. And again, there were parts of it I liked and parts of it I didn't like. As time went, the one thing I found out is if you're honest with a player, that's the best thing. Even if it hurts them,
definitely
be honest with them. And I think players appreciate that. And as hard as it is to do sometimes, to take it was documented. Remember when we did that TV thing in 2011? We didn't have a great season, but they did this whole documentary on us in training camp. And they showed Miguel Robide, who was a first pick when I was in Calgary. I had taken him in Calgary, and then he signed here. And having to tell him he didn't make the team, and he had no idea where he was going to do or what he was going to. I watch it every now and again just to remember how this is not just a job. This is I'm ending people's careers, and when we make decisions that are very, very difficult, and so I don't take that lightly. And it's not a fun thing, but I mean, what's fun is taking Chris Rossetti from doing nothing to, get him out there, get him out scouting in the U.S., get him to meeting a lot of people in the NFL, and then watching him climb the ladder with the Dolphins. And now he's number 2 in command with the Giants. At least today he is. They may be fired soon, but that's the life. That's the life.
That is. But you've also prepared him for the life, because he's been a part of the life and he's seen it through a real lens, not through some sort of manufactured, dream that isn't the truth. And I think you've got the unique perspective that you started in developing these chattels before they were, like, you know what I mean? Like working in college, you got to see what it's like to prepare them for the next step. And then it's the same thing when they're at the next step, the good and the bad. And what's most important that I've seen, and it's in any industry, but again, like sports is so different that it's such a tight-knit community. You don't want to burn bridges in a community like the sports industry. And if you start lying to people, or you start playing games, or delivering the bad news with kind of a fake, glass half full approach, it comes back to you. And you develop a reputation stays with you in that industry as much as anywhere. So your longevity speaks to the fact that, your reputation, whether you've been a hard ass with people or not, you've been honest, and people know what they're going to get. They're not going to get today's version of Jim if they take you on, right?
And that's exactly, I think you hit a great point. I was thinking about it. I mean, I did a thing at the Grey Cup with Wally Buono, and back in my young days, Wally Buono quits because the owner's kid is playing quarterback, and here I am, this young brash, idiot, thinks I'm going to replace Wally Buono, who was actually the winningest coach in the history of this league. And I was working with Don Matthews at the time, and Don had the one great, I mean, he knew, you always knew who the boss was with Don, but he also empowered us to believe that we were great. And a lot of things Don was very misunderstood about, but that he made us, we all felt like you wouldn't be here if you weren't the best at what you do. Well, that's great. So in 2001, I'm in the XFL, and Tommy Maddox wins the MOP. I'm the offensive coordinator. We win the XFL championship. I come back with Don into Montreal in 2002. Anthony Calvillo wins the MVP. We win the Grey Cup. And I think I have the football world by the gonads. And it's just, so I can handle the kid's a quarterback. I can handle this. I'm the guru. I mean, it was just stupid. When I think back on it, I think what a brash, stupid decision that was to go there. And sure enough, the dad intervened, even though he said he wasn't going to. And ultimately, in the end, I cut his kid while he was in Europe. And then he fired me 2 days before Christmas, probably deservedly so. But that's, again, it's part of what you go through.
That's the journey
in the whole learning process.
Yeah.
And I've been careful about, so I took basically in 2004, took the whole year off, stayed in Calgary, started a football school, and kind of thought about, well, maybe the coaching isn't for me, or I couldn't do it. Even though I was just coming off these 2 great years, I had the 1 year with the guy whose kid owned the team, and I did what I thought was right and cut him, and then he fired me. And is that what I want to be involved in?
Right.
And then John Ferzani, I started a football school. We had about 120 kids. Marco Iannuzzi, who went on and played in the NFL or in the CFL, and Rolly Limbala. I mean, we had some guys who went on and played from back in at that school. John Ferzani comes up to me and says, "Hey Jim, can you be the GM?" They had just bought the team from the box cutter, and I had never done a thing with being a GM.
Had it never crossed your mind? Like, was it even something you'd thought about?
Nothing I'd even thought about. I said, absolutely. I said, I can do this. But see, I engulfed myself in it. And the first 2 years I was by myself. I didn't have any assistants. I did the Canadian, I did the US scouting, and I engulfed myself in what it is to be a GM. And I was fortunate. We had a guy named Ted Hellard, who is the guy who basically developed the current day salary cap. Yep. And he was one of our owners, and he helped me with learning how to manage the business side and things like that. And I think people nowadays, you watch head coaches become GMs. Well, they're becoming GMs in name only, because they've never as a head coach, they've been an assistant. They know people who have worked on their staff. They know what they've gone through. They have no idea what scouts go. They don't. I do, because I did that. I was out grinding and driving from place to place, timing players and scouting players and writing reports and putting together salary caps and doing that. And we ended up going 11-7 that first year in Calgary. We were in the third year, Tom Higgins, the ownership, again, I got along good with Tom, and but they felt like we should be better than we were. They fired Tom, and I went down. We were still in the playoffs, and they flew me down to Arizona to meet with Huff. And Huff had been in the Arena League, and I'd spent the last 3 years building this team into what I thought was going to be a pretty good team. And, Huff he knew George Cortez, and he knew some guys he wanted to hire. And then I helped him with Chris Jones and people that I had. And we win the Grey Cup his first year. And it was everything just clicked right.
Yeah.
So he came in and wanted to be the head coach and general manager. In fact, here's a little interesting fact for your listeners who are, one of the 3 million that I'm sure are out there. Right.
This is the behind the music with Jim right now. This is an exclusive.
Is on the Grey Cup, I'm one of the only ones that doesn't have title of president or general manager, because the ownership group felt like technically I was the general manager, but Huff wanted to be the head coach, general manager.
Really?
My job stayed the same as it was when Tom Higgins was the coach. So I became the senior vice president. So on the Grey Cup, it says senior vice president, Jim Barker.
Wow,
and the only one on the Grey Cup that's not a president or a general manager.
Amazing. But you're also on the Grey Cup as a general manager in another spot, aren't you?
True. That was in Toronto.
So, I mean, you still got yours. You just have to mix it up a little bit.
The point I'm making is these guys going from head to becoming head coach and general manager, I think it's hard to do that because there's not a job. I was an assistant coach. I was a head coach. I was a offensive coordinator. There's not a job I haven't done. Then I go and I'm a scout, and I'm the bird dog scout doing all that. I did all the Canadian draft and putting all that together. Everything in the organization I've done. So when I ask somebody to do something, I'm not asking them to do something. I learned it from the inside out. For 5 years in Calgary, I did nothing but general manager personnel stuff. I didn't do any coaching. I wasn't doing other things. I was focused on that 12 months a year. Right. So I learned the GM job the way I had taken, the first 40 years of my life learning the coaching job. Yeah. And again, I think that's what was a little different for me. So when I went to Toronto, and you were the president of the business side or the vice president of tickets or whatever the hell you were. I don't know. All I know is you were a higher up. Yeah. And we had such a great group there. I mean, that group with you and Beth and Keeley, and I mean, that was a special time. I mean, I'll never forget, I come in I'm the coach, and Adam Rita, because I had been through this, I said, because when should I tell the story about getting hired in Toronto? I'm helping Scott Milanovich get the job. That's what I was doing. I was helping him get the job. And Adam, I don't think wanted Scott to be the coach. I think he wanted Doug Barry, and Bob Nicholson and the rest of the owner, they wanted Scott Milanovich, and they messed up and didn't offer him enough years. And so Scott's a little bit, he's learned from me. He played for me. And so he coached for me in Calgary. He said, listen, if I hang up the phone, I'm calling Montreal and I'm going back there. So they wouldn't give him a third year. So he went back to Montreal, and Adam Rita called Bob Nicholson, and Bob said, give him the third year. We want him as our coach. So he called it back and he said, I'm already gone. And just like and that's Scott. So Bob called me and said, Jim, what would it take for you to come back? I said, I need to be the head coach and general manager and run the whole thing and be able to get it in order. I don't want to do that forever, but I want to, I can get it going. And they said, well, Adam Reed is still here and we'd like to. Yeah, I said, that's fine. Adam can stay there as a general manager. So I went in as the head coach. I don't know if I was a vice president. It didn't matter because he knew. And I think everybody knew at that, you knew. Everybody kind of knew that I was the final say. So I won the CFL Coach of the Year that year because it was just such a garbage team the 2 years before that you were selling tickets for. I mean, they'd won 7 games in 2 years.
That was a tough slog that year to try to sell tickets for that. That was tough.
I got hired. It was late because they went through the whole thing with Scott, and I get hired. It's close to March, and there was nobody to hire, staff member, so I get Mike O'Shea, who's selling medical equipment. And I said, oh, you want to come out and coach? I can't pay you like what you're making, but down the road, you never know what can happen. Well,
you might coach 3 straight Grey Cup.
Yeah,
Cup
5 straight.
5 straight.
5 straight. You never know. You might be the greatest coach in the history, and he may end up being when it's all said and done.
He might.
And I did the same thing with Orlando Steinauer. He was just getting ready to take a job with that uniform company, Cisco or
Cintas. Katie worked there. Katie worked there.
Yeah, he had just taken a job with them, and I gave him the same spiel. And of course, we know what happened with him. I made him the coordinator my second year there in 2011. Then Scott came in and kept him. And then he went on to be the coordinator and then went to, the rest is history. He's now the president in there. But those guys had never coached. But those were guys I was able to bring in and get them on our staff. And I'd cut every quarterback the day I got hired. I cut every quarterback because I didn't think any of them were ever going to be right. And I brought people in that I thought could help us either keep developing and trade them or whatever. And we ended up making the playoff. We made it to the Eastern Final and lost to Hamilton in the Eastern Final. But I was really proud of, I was my only ever coach of the year. I won the coach of the year. And then the next year, again, there was just a lot of stuff going on. And I was having to move people. And I was trying to get it set up because I knew at the end of 2011, I wasn't going to stay. I didn't want to do both. You can't do both. It's an impossible job.
Not effectively. Yeah. And you know what? It's one thing that actually Chris Rudge, of all people, told me when I was working there. And it's a line that I've heard before that sticks with me, which is you're better off doing 5 things at 100% than 100 things at 5%. Mm-hmm. And it's because I think in that, especially that 2011 year was symbolic of a lot of us running like chickens with our heads cut off, wearing so many hats and doing so many things to keep things afloat and to get it set up in the right direction. But I mean, 2012 is where it kind of culminated with, I think all the pieces were put in the right spot.
I mean, it was 2011, and I told them I'm stepping down. It's for the good of the club, for the good of me, for the good of everybody.
Yep.
Because I knew I wasn't a guy who just wanted to be the head coach, general manager. I'm a guy who spent 5 years as just a general manager. I couldn't do that and be the head coach and do it justice. Plus the dynamics in the locker room change when the head coach, and this is Chris Jones, I think, got a good taste of this. When you're the head coach and GM, there's no bad guy. It's all on you.
It's just
and
you.
Players react to you differently. Like with Scott Milanovich, we had a relationship that he could, anytime he needed to, he could put the bad guy stuff on me. Or if I needed to, whatever we had to do, we could work together, and we were tied at the hip. I mean, I think that's a hard thing to find. And so anyway, so we were able, like you said, in 2012 to bring in a coaching staff that was, it had O'Shea and Steinauer, but it also had Jason Moss, who was in this year or last year's, won the Grey Cup last year, was the coach of the year this year. He was on that staff. Marcus Brady, who's now with the LA Chargers, he was on that staff. Chris Jones, who became, a Grey Cup winning head coach in Edmonton. I mean, we had an all-star. When you look back on it,
it was an all-star team.
It was an all-star team, and we didn't even know it. We didn't even know it.
Well, it was so cohesive. I think, when you're empowered to put the pieces together and to have a group that works so well together, trusts each other, like that, there was no worry that year of anybody going behind anybody, or it was just rude. And that was front office as well as the football operations, right? Like it was just this group of people who just got along, common goal, and it happened. I mean, it came together like in every way. I can't think of a line it didn't hit on, top to bottom. Even down to the ball boys and then the ticket staff, and like everybody was just in it and bought in. And look what happens, right?
Yeah.
Look what happened. I'm carrying this with me this week. That's what happened. That's what happened.
Right. We win the 2012 Grey Cup at home, which is a pressure situation in itself. And, we made some controversial moves. We got rid of Corey Boyd. I mean, I remember getting a call from the higher ups, higher than you. How can you cut Corey Boyd? We've sold so many Corey Boyd jerseys.
I remember that.
And we bring in a little guy named Chad Cackert, who basically is dynamic through that entire season and kind of epitomized what this whole thing was about. And again, to go and win that Grey Cup was great. And then 2013, we won the division championship, but Mr. Braley chose to start dismantling your group. And, all of a sudden the people that made me love the Toronto Argonauts, Daniel Steinfeld, Beth Waldman, Dave Keeley. I mean, you just go down the line and they're gone. And it was different for me. Everything became different. And it's not a knock on Chris Rudge. I mean, I thought Chris was a outstanding president. I mean, I had no problem with that, but it was losing the people we lost that hurt. And again, it was a tough one. We won the division in 13, but lost in the Eastern Final. And then 14 and 15, we had, we did okay. And it just kind of,
so what
you
you're
were
saying,
gone at that point. I'm saying,
if I was there, you would have won 4 straight Grey Cups, is what you're saying.
I'm saying that if the synergy stayed the same, we'd have had a much better chance, because organizations win Grey Cups, not individual coaches or players. Even organizations win. And I think that's what people in business need to understand. You're never going to win yourself.
Right.
You're going to win if your organization is that if everybody in that place is all pulling in the same direction and all want one common theme goal, you now have a chance. And that's what that year showed. And what the subsequent years showed. And again, I had a different relationship with you than any of those other people, not just with you, but with all those people, with you and Beth and all those people. And we lost that. And while you say, well, Daniel Steinfeld never caught a pass, Beth Waldman never made a tackle, but what they did was so much more important in terms of the glue and the cohesiveness that our players felt. I mean, I really felt like that was the start of the demise, was making big changes on the business side. And now there became this friction and there's these issues that, I maybe didn't need to happen. So
yeah, well, I mean, It's true.
A
I mean,
great learning
2020
lesson.
hindsight. I mean, it stung at the time, obviously, for a lot of us, and I think far be it for us to say we knew better. I mean, it's easy, but at the same time, I mean, we knew we had a great thing going, 100%. There's nobody that can deny that what the trajectory we were on was positive, coming off of the top of the mountain, literally. You can't draw it up any better than that. The 100th Grey Cup in your own backyard, at home, on the biggest stage, which I don't know if you know this, and I think it's still the case. At least until very recently, it was the highest grossing Canadian sports event in one night in history. That one day,
Really?
more than any World Series, world, and I get that we haven't been in the World Series since the
How many
90s,
people were at that game? Because we were talking about that. Was it
officially.
70,
Uh,
72?
Unofficially, it was still announced in the high 50s, but I can tell you it was beyond capacity of the Rogers Center
Right.
because there were seats that shouldn't have been sold that were that were sold. It was the sports version of a Taylor Swift concert, basically. Uh, and so it was definitely, it was the top of the mountain in every respect. And I mean, if that's going to be where I went out from the industry, there's worse places to hang your hat up.
Yeah.
But uh, but I think even like you were talking about in this industry, I mean, it's part of what you sign up for in sports, even on the business side, that the sword drops a lot easier, I find, than maybe if you're working for a widgets company or whatever, or in real
Mhm.
estate or what have you. So, from the perspective of, in both of our cases, when we get let go from somewhere, the resilience to pick up and find something new. I mean, we can make a choice then and feel sorry for ourselves. Or, I mean, in your case, I don't even think it's fair to say you've redefined your career because I think your career has just had a positive trajectory where if one door shuts, the next one's open right away. Like you've got, I don't know if it's you just contingency plan for yourself or you're so, you know, you like we talked about before, you haven't burned bridges, you've got the reputation you've got. So the doors are open to you in a lot of different
Mhm.
spots. But it's very interesting to see career changes, not just head coach to GM or assistant to head coach to GM, but now, I mean, we haven't even talked about you're a TV guy now. I mean, this might be the best broadcast you're on for all of 2024. But
Probably.
this podcast aside,
Yes.
was that like was that again, like I've sort of asked this different ways. Was that something you ever saw yourself doing? Like, did you ever picture I'm going to be that guy? Because
Not in a million. Like I say, I chose to go to USC because I didn't have to do speech class. I
but I
mean,
mean, when I met you, you were, I mean, maybe you didn't, you hit it well. If being outspoken and making yourself heard
right.
was something you didn't like doing, you could have fooled me when we met. Now,
Yeah,
granted that,
by that time I was comfortable in front of the microphone and I was comfortable in terms of talking on television and doing those things. I mean, that's what when you're the head coach you can become and GM, you can become those more comfortable in that environment. So basically what happened was in 2016 I got a new contract, and in 2017 they chose to move in a different direction. A new president came in and he wanted to be able to have his own guy. And so in 2017, I didn't get fired until March, but I still had 2 years on my contract, and they won the Grey Cup that year. So we won in 12, and then they won again in 17. And then I called because the way contracts are, if I would have gone to another team, they would have offset it.
yeah.
But I have a good friend, Paul Graham, who just retiring from TSN, and we've just been close friends ever since all the work we've done with the with the league and things. I've been down to his place in Mexico, and I asked him. I said, is there a way I could work my way into trying television? And so he worked me in 2017 and 18, and I got a chance to try it. And it was okay, but I wasn't sure that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I wish now I would have probably stayed at that, because I'm still kind of an extra guy. I'm the next guy. I'm never with the main group. But then in 2019, Orlando Steinauer called me, who I had hired back in 2010, and asked me to come and help him with how to become a head coach and general manager, to help him with the cap, help him with with teaching him all the things I learned in those 5 years as being a GM to try to help him get while he was there. Well, what happened was June Jones ended up leaving, so they asked me to coach and step back to coaching, which again I hadn't done, but it was fine. I enjoyed it and helped Tommy Condell with the offense, and we ended up 15-3, and which was the best year Hamilton has had in a while. And then COVID hit, and after COVID, when COVID hit, it was it killed my job, and so I didn't have a job anymore. And then when they came back, they decided that they didn't need a consultant. Consultant is, for me, I won't ever do it again.
It's a dangerous title to have. I mean, I've had that too. And it's as expendable as it is useful, because there's no real definition to it.
Yeah. You know what bothered me the most was, because I didn't know how to just sit back and consult. I got in and I was full-time, like I was the general manager. And I would do all the reports and all the decision. I would make them, and then I would pass them on. And it gets frustrating sometimes when you do all the work, and then it's just kind of, okay, yeah, we appreciate that consultant, but that's what you are.
We'll take it from here. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got it from here. And that happened. I came back and did the consultant thing again after COVID. The Argos called me to come in, and I came in for a year there, and Pinball called and wanted me to help the young guys. Vince Magri, who's now with the Buffalo Bills, but I had brought him in as a video guy, and then kind of progressed him to the head of Canadian scouting, and then got him on the road, and he became basically he was the general manager. He was signing most of the players and doing those kinds of things. I mean, here's a funny story about Vince. Vince has a lot to do with this Grey Cup that they just won. He put that team together. He didn't leave for the Bills until the season had started. So he deserves a ton of credit for that. But I got to tell you a funny story, the whole consultant thing. So I'm down at this thing, the CGS, which is an all-star game. And I see this kid, Letcher, who's now playing for Montreal. This kid, and he's not on a neg list. So I call Vince and I say, hey, Vin, you ought to put this kid on. He's really explosive returner. He's got great spot quickness. He's not on a neg list. And Vince says to me, he goes, wow, yeah, I'll take a look at him. And I said, what? You're going to take a look at him? I taught you how to do this. I'm telling you, you want to put this guy on. I mean, it kind of just rung a bell with me that what I say doesn't matter anymore. It's like once you become a consultant, it's like, okay, that's your opinion.
Yeah. Thanks for your advice.
Yeah. But it's not like, okay, well, if you say he's a player because you taught me how to break film down, what makes players play. It was not, it was like, yeah, well, I'll take a look at him. Well, of course, that night, Archambault puts him on and Montreal gets him. And he ends up, now he's been in the league for a couple of years. And it was just, again, it's not a knock on Vinny. It's just, that's the nature of his job. He wanted to make sure he did it correctly. And, but that's where you get when you're a consultant. And that was a tough one. So again, I loved being in Toronto. I love the players they had there. I think Ryan Dinwiddie is the next great head coach. I think he'll be a Hall of Fame guy. I thought their staff was out. I thought the staff was outstanding. Pinball, he stays in his lane, but he's so valuable to you can walk in anywhere, and when Pinball's there, it's cool to be a CFL fan. And that's what we fight in Toronto. Yep. More than anything, we fight that the CFL's minor league, the CFL this, the CFL. But when Pinball's in the room, man, I am the biggest CFL fan. And that's just the way pinball is. It's magic. I can't explain it, but he is the Toronto Argonauts to me.
It's charisma plus.
Yeah. But his title is general manager, and that's really not what likes doing. He should be the president. He should be the whatever he wants, really. And that's kind of so. And then and Alex Russell and Vince were there, and then Michael decided he wanted to bring John Murphy back, and I brought John Murphy in the league, but I didn't want to be on the same staff. It's just not my cup of tea, and so I called Paul Graham and see if I could go back, and went back to TSN, and again, it's been fantastic. I really like the people that I work with there. This was my second consecutive year, and I think I'm getting better at it. I'm not as good as I want to be. There's just a lot, when they're talking in your ear and things, and knowing how to close. You have 30 seconds, and knowing how to get your point across, but still close it is not an easy thing to do. And so I'm learning at it, but I love doing it. And it's the funnest thing ever. I mean, I really, really do have fun at work. I get to work with, Kate Burness, Matt Dunnigan, Milt Stegall, Davis Sanchez, Enoch. I mean, all those guys they're great fun to be around. And so I love that part of it. Do I want to run a team again? I probably do. I probably want to do it one more time. It's one of those things that I feel like I can do it better than anybody in the world. I don't think there's a person in the world who can do it better than me, especially in Canada. But again, if nobody else thinks that, then that's, that I live with that, and I'm fine. But I think I would like one more kick at the can.
Well, let's make this the video resume then for the world.
No, let's not.
But you know what though? Like, you talk about, all the people that you're working with on TSN. Like, I did watch, and I do watch, and I'm not exaggerating when I say you're the one with the most energy on that panel. So forget age or whatever stereotypes might go with that. Like, you bring it. And I mean, knowledge wise, obviously you've got probably the most to contribute because of the experience you've got, probably bringing up 90% of the people who you're talking about, even the people at the desk with you. I'm sure you've had a hand in one sense of either evaluating.
Davis Sanchez played for me, and
there you go.
I told a great story about him, and we won a Labor Day game his year in Calgary. We win a Labor Day game we had no business winning. We were like 14, 15 point underdogs. And I'm celebrating. I finally fall asleep. And at 3 a.m, I get a call from the Calgary Police Department because Davis has squirted mustard all over somebody. It's like there was just no rest for the wicked. It's like, and I love Davis. I think he improves all the time, and he's going to be a long time. There's nobody on television more now because he's doing the NFL stuff, and I'm really happy for him that he's progressed the way he is. And I've learned so much from the other guy, Matt Dunnigan and Milt Stegall. Milt Stegall is he's a master. Do you know, at 54 years old yesterday at the Grey Cup, and I timed him myself. Lapo and I both had stopwatches, and he ran a 4.8440 at 54 years old. And we both had the exact same time, 4.84. And
I thought you meant you and Milt both had the same time, that you ran a 4.84.
No. Lapo and I had the same time on our clock. Because for a 54-year-old man to run 4.84, that's unbelievable. He could conceivably play running a 4.84. There's guys playing in the CFL, playing wide receiver, that don't run 4.84.
Wow.
And
he's got good hands.
But he's got a magic about him, about the way he presents. Now there's only one Milt Stegall, and you can't. That's the thing about I watch them and try to learn from them, but everybody has their own style and their own charisma and way they say things and do things. Matt Dunnigan is totally different than Milt. Effective, but very, very different.
Yeah.
And so it's been that's been interesting learning this part of it. Like I say, I've spent my whole life learning the coaching side, like the X's and O's, to the techniques, to the management, to all of that. And now you're in a totally different business. Yeah. And you went through the same thing. You went from selling tickets to selling real estate. Now you're still selling, but obviously running a company like that is a totally different thing for you.
Well, even at the Argos, I went from being the guy who had to save all the money on the finance side to being the guy who tried to spend all the money on the sales side. It was conflicting objectives, but you know, you've gone clearly from student to master when it comes to, coaching, GMing, and now, you're not quite a student anymore on the TV side, but I think you're, on your way to trying to master that as well. Like, I think it shows there's always something more. I think you kind of have shown that there's always something else to do. There's always another thing. And you've said yourself, even from a confidence perspective, I think one of the key lessons that you didn't say, but hopefully people get it, is you can't lose that drive and belief that you're the best at what you do. Right? Because
that's absolutely
like you
absolutely the truth.
That's the thing. Like you will be a GM again, head coach, president, whatever. It'll happen, but it's because of that belief. If you approached it in a different way, well, I hope it happens, but I don't know. Nobody's going to want me because ... Well, no, it's I'm the best person for this. You believe it. You've got the experience to back it up. That confidence serves you well when you're 22 years old, trying to land a job as an assistant at Occidental College or whatever. The same way it'll, knock on wood, land you a gig as whatever leader of whatever team it is at, what do you know, 45, 46 years old? 40,
yeah,
43?
Right. Yeah. Well, you talk about the word best, and I honestly believe I use BEST to me, if you want to have an organization, there's 4 things that go into it. And it's no different between yourself and your ability and a group. And the first thing, like you say, is you have to believe in yourself. If everybody in your organization doesn't believe in themselves, you don't have a chance. And then second, the E in BEST is for enthusiasm. I mean, if you don't wake up excited about getting to go sell real estate, Daniel, you ain't selling anything. I mean, you got to wake up pumped up about it. And I'll tell you how I do it, how I demonstrate this to kids is they say, oh yeah, they can. So I'll bring 2 or 3 kids down in front, and I'll put them on one side of the stage, and I'll say, okay, here's a chair over here on the other side. First one to touch wins. And 3, 2, 1, go. And they will run over there and try to touch a chair. I said, that's great. Now go back. Now imagine these are 15, 16-year-old kids. Go back there. Go back. Same 3. Go back. Now this is anything goes. And now I'll put a $50 bill on there. I'll say, now get the dynamic of enthusiasm is a total different kind of enthusiasm. And that's what people have to understand. You have to understand there's something at the end there. It's not just muddling your way through thinking you got to wake up pumped up about what you're doing, or you got no chance. That's right. So enthusiasm, and then anything worthwhile you achieve takes sacrifice. I mean, I have my closest friend is Clay Matthews, the older Clay Matthews, the dad of the one who played for the Packers, and he played 21 years in the NFL. And I talk a lot about how he sacrificed. When we were in high school, our senior year, I'm going to the beach. I'm driving now. So I'm heading to the beach. Hey, Clay, come on, let's go. I got to work out. Always got to work out. So he plays 21 years in the NFL, and I'm kind of injured and not very good. But it's because he sacrificed. He did the things you have to do to be that.
Right.
And we talk a lot about, and I know on this show, you deal a lot in work and things. We talk about work-life balance, and Orlando Steinauer, he's a big believer in work-life balance. I grew up in an era, there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work. And if you want to be at a certain level, then there's family. And I hate to say that, but that's the way it's been in football, is there is no work-life balance. You sacrifice. I sacrificed. I wasn't as great a husband. I wasn't as great a dad as I should have been or could have been, because I sacrificed in order to achieve my own personal goal. Now, it's a decision I made. But in hindsight, looking back, if you don't sacrifice, it's really not anything. So you have to understand that something has got to give. And I just think the whole work-life balance thing is a creation of somebody who has never really done much. And it just, I mean, I hate to say that, but
it's priority. You got to choose your priorities, and you've got to be focused on a goal. And if you've got 15 goals at equal weight, it makes it very hard to be the best at any one of those 15 things.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. And then the last part one, the T, is the most important. It's what we all strive for, is trust. Because if you don't trust the people in your organization and they don't trust you, you have to, I use an example again with kids. I bring them up and I say, I want you to close your eyes and imagine I have a rope. I would have an actual rope there. And I have them grab the rope and I say, okay, I want you to imagine there's nobody between you and 20 stories, and except somebody holding on to this rope, the other end of it. Who do you want holding on to that? And I try to get through to them that when somebody says, for example, if my daughter said, I want my dad holding it because he's not going to let me fall. You know, that's the ultimate in trust, right? Is try to be the person that person's going to say, I want Jim Barker to hold the rope because I know he's not going to let me fall.
Right.
And that's the kind of trust it takes in anything, I believe, to be successful. So I use those 4 things in everything I do, in setting up an organization, in my personal life, in my business life, everything. That BEST to me is everything. And if whatever I choose to do, am I enthusiastic about it? Am I sacrificing something to achieve this? That's just, that to me is part of again, it's probably been 15, 20 years that that kind of has rung with me. So, you know, you keep saying the word best, and I love that word because of the BEST in it, what best stands for to me.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, that resonates to anybody at any stage of their life that's looking to achieve anything at all. I think that message, it's hard to muddle that in a way that it's not useful to everybody who's listening to it. And,
yeah.
I mean, let's call it what it is, Jim. You're the best. You're the best, buddy.
Thanks, Daniel.
I mean, I think I've told you, even on TSN, like when it comes to enthusiasm, all these things, I mean, these are definitely attributes I've seen in you since I first got to know you. They've never even diluted a little bit. If anything, you're getting more enthusiastic. You've got a greater belief in yourself. And that's why you're the best, man.
I appreciate that.
I feel like that's a pretty good place for us to cut this chapter of the discussion
off. There you go.
Because
yeah.
If there's any message people are going to take from this, it's following that BEST. Maybe we'll call the episode "Be Like Jim." an hour with James Timothy.
I appreciate you having me on and getting a chance to tell my story a little bit, because I want everybody to be able to. I mean, I've had a blessed life.
Absolutely.
I really have. I mean, do I wish I would have done some things different? No question. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have things you can't ever go back and get. But if you understand why you're doing them, then it all pays off in the end. So again, I love to preach that message of do what's right for you and make decisions that are right for you, and everything will work out great. So
absolutely. And
I
don't let any
you allowing me to do this.
No, it's my pleasure. And I think, you know, even the stuff that's gone sour, because it does in everybody's life, it shows you haven't taken for granted why, and learning from it and turning it into opportunities down the road also, right? It's been no wasted time is a really, really important thing. And I think
I've been fired more than anybody watching this thing. I can promise you that. I've been fired more than any of them. And every time I get fired, I take and I go get a bottle of champagne and I actually toast to what the next adventure is going to be, because that firing is not a stop. That's like a go. It's now time to move.
You're liberated.
Exactly. I look at it. That's how you have to look at it.
Absolutely.
After the first time when I got fired at New Mexico State, and that guy had told me, do this and you have a chance to keep, and I got fired, that I looked at it as, well, I got fired from that, but the things I learned in that time and that I was able to take with me, you're right, liberated me to move forward in the thing. And again, anytime we hit roadblocks, those are all these things that we grow from.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm not cheering for either of us to be fired, but we do need to have a little toast and a celebration with a drink the next time I see you.
Just
to be happy. Exactly. Yeah, I don't think we don't need an excuse like being fired for that.
That's right.
That's right. But yeah, when you decide to leave the nice weather and come back to the frozen tundra, I'll be waiting for you with a bottle and a couple glasses in my hand.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. We'll talk again.